Welcome back to another edition of the Prepper Recon Podcast. Our mission is to bring you great interviews with preppers from around the world so you can be better informed and better prepared for everything from a hurricane to the end of the world as we know it. This episode is brought to you by CampingSurvival.com. Whether your plan is to bug out or bug in, CampingSurvival.com has all of your preparedness needs, including bug-out bags, long-term storage food, water filters, gas masks, and first aid kits. Check them out online today at CampingSurvival.com. Be sure to enter coupon code PrepperRecon for a 5% discount on your entire order. Today's guest is Steve Olds. Steve is a former military pilot, and he recently wrote a new book called The Patriot Mission Story. Steve, thanks for coming on the show.
Mark, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. And thanks for coming on the show, and thank you for your service to our country as well.
My pleasure.
And this is your first time on the show, so tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about your military service.
Well, I actually grew up in the D.C. area right outside of Andrews Air Force Base, so I always had had kind of a front row seat at all the military jets coming and going, especially the ones hauling the dignitaries around, and always had an interest in flying. And so after school, I went to University of Maryland, went to ROTC there, and went to flight school. And turned out that flying low and fast was a whole lot of fun. So I ended up flying F-15s. And it's kind of interesting. I realize this might be dating myself, but I graduated from college the weekend that Top Gun came out. So it was kind of a cool time to be flying fast and flying fighters. And of course, at that time, the most recent military action was in Libya, and President Reagan was in his second term. So we were just basically joining a flying club, and it was a lot of fun right up until Saddam Hussein decided he would invade Kuwait, and we happened to be the part of the first wing that responded to that situation, and so that was a big part of my military experience, and went through the Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And was able to come back home after the war just a couple days before my bride gave birth to our first baby girl. So that's a rapid summary of my military career.
Wow, well that's very interesting, and we're glad you made it home safe. And can you tell us a little bit about your new book, The Patriot Mission Story? Sure.
The Patriot Mission Story is a bold blueprint to rebuild America through the power of small business. I actually have been an entrepreneurial enthusiast all my life. I can remember as a kid, doing anything I could to make a buck, whether it was mowing lawns or shoveling snow or raking leaves, whatever it took. I turned wrenches in a gas station, and I was a ditch digger at Plumbers. And I was always intrigued by business. And actually, when I was still flying in the Air Force, I also got my real estate license. So part of my interests in business had been just growing and developing, and I remember one particular sortie. We were doing a training mission, a 2 against 2 out over the middle at the Atlantic Ocean. And as I'm in the middle of a dogfight, I'm thinking about a particular real estate contract and how to negotiate it and how to get it closed. And it dawned on me at that wonderful moment in time, this is how guys get killed flying jets. So I figured it would be better to hang up the flight suit and pursue small business. And over the course of the next 20 years, that's been my world. And so the book really is a response to an inspiration that I had that was able to capitalize on both my military experience and the small business world, so that we could map out a game plan to actually rebuild the country in record time and make a lot of changes as we go.
Wow, that's very cool. I guess you have to kind of pick one or the other. You can't be multitasking when you're flying a jet.
Generally not a good idea at supersonic speeds, and it's one of those things that's probably best to give the young guy the airplane, let them fly, and focus on one or the other.
Sure thing. And why did you write the book?
Well, at the end of 2010, I was finishing up a project that I've been working on for a number of years, and I was at the point where I had 3 or 4 different things on my table, just trying to figure out which one I wanted to work on. And I was working with a buddy of mine, Greg Land, and he and I were looking at a couple of projects together. And it was one of those things, Mark, you've probably been there, where you could do this or that or the other thing. They all make money, but the real question is, where's your heart? What do you really want to focus on? And I can still remember, it was January 16th of 2011, and I was sitting in my office, and I just closed my eyes and I leaned back and I said, Lord, just show me what you want me to do. And at that moment in time, right behind me in my chair as I leaned back, there was a library table, and on the table was a radio. And I remember hearing the top of the hour news. And they remarked that this day was the 20th anniversary of the kickoff of Desert Storm. And in that moment, I was immediately transported back to the moment standing in a tent in Saudi Arabia where our squadron commander told us that we were going to kick off Desert Storm that night. And I never believed, Mark, that we would fight. I always believed Saddam Hussein was a master manipulator. He changed all kinds of things and played shell games, and he basically just did a great job of keeping everybody at bay, as he pretended to comply. So I never believed we would actually fight. Well, clearly I was wrong. Now, fast forward 20 years later, I get this vision. I can't believe that I'm standing by watching America self-destruct. And very clearly in that moment in time, the Lord said to me, so what are you going to do about it? And I laughed. I said, yeah, I remember. What am I going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And the answer to that question is what's mapped out in this book that's now coming up on a three-year endeavor to rebuild the nation. Very, very cool. And you just touched on that a little bit, but what happened to our American dream? Why is everything falling apart? Well, it's interesting because it's very similar to why old guys die in fighter aircraft. And the answer is because they get complacent. They already know everything. They've been there, done that. They start to not pay as close attention to the fundamentals. And in fact, in America, we have had a situation over decades where we have lost the fundamentals. We have allowed so many things to just kind of drift away. Not all at once, not cataclysmic, until you look at the sum total of all the things that have changed. If you look at where we were coming out of World War II in terms of our manufacturing capability, in terms of our American spirit, in terms of our financial system, if you look at what happened in the 70s when we got off the gold standard, if you look at debt, on and on and on, all of those by themselves are serious elements, but when you put them all together, we've got a big problem. So the American dream, from my vantage point, has been slipping away because everybody has been interested in taking care of their own little turf. For example, the small business community, I've asked for a number of years about, being involved in political stuff, and most small business guys said, hey, it's all the same, left, right, Democrat, Republican, they do what they do. I don't have time to deal with that. I gotta work on my business. And unfortunately, I would say across the board, what we've done is abdicate our accountability as citizens, which gives us a real challenge. So that's essentially what's happened to the American dream. And then you touched on a little bit that we've lost track of the fundamentals. Can you tell us what the 7 founding liberty principles are? Sure, I'd be happy to. The first one is that we believe the economic backbone of America is powered by the leadership of small business founders, employees, and their families. The second is that we believe providentially inspired American ingenuity has created the strongest economy and most generous society the world has ever known. Third, we believe it is important to elect leaders who share a common belief in our Judeo-Christian heritage and the magnificence of the U.S. Constitution. Fourth, we believe entrepreneurship is the primary economic means to inspire men and women to pursue their dreams and achieve prosperity. 5, we believe life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are put at tremendous risk by those who reject capitalism and promote excessive public spending. 6, we believe personal property rights and the free enterprise system are timeless constitutional cornerstones upon which America was founded. And number 7, we believe it is crucial to inspire young citizens to become tough-minded, ethical entrepreneurs so they can help create long-term solutions for America.
And I think that sometimes folks get discouraged when they try to get involved and they feel like that their vote doesn't count, and maybe they'll go so far as to go to the congressional website and fire a couple of emails at their senator or their congressman, and they don't really see any fruit from their labors. Do you feel like that they would see more if they started getting involved at the local level?
Without question. I mean, for one thing, there's so much capability that we have in local elections, and first of all, just beginning to understand what happens in politics. And most people don't get involved simply because they don't understand it. They don't know where to begin. The easiest place to begin is right in their backyard, where they can actually get up close and personal. They can learn what's really going on, because most of them are distracted by what pundits say about what's going on, but they really don't have any idea. So local politics is important because, A, it influences statewide and national elections, obviously, but it's also a great learning ground for our folks to learn what's going on.
Can you tell us what personal capital is and how we can work to develop that?
Sure. One of the central themes of our model is that we want to grow our capital, both personal and professional. Personal capital is growing 3 things. Our personal education, which we take a view on as experiential. We want people to experience our education because most people are not really interested in sitting down and reading books and studying stuff. They want to learn it by experience. So our strategy is to help people experience history, experience economics, experience politics, as we just discussed in the last segment. The second element is leadership. America is dying for leaders. We don't have a leadership development process in America. And part of our strategy, that's why Patriot Mission is a leadership development company, because it's that critical. We need to develop leaders at every level of our country. And the third is money. If you don't understand how money works, then you can't possibly plan and be involved in your family, your business, your county, your state, your country. So those elements are really crucial, and they have to be learned from our perspective practically. Does that make sense, Mark?
It does. Very, very much so. Now, how can we grow our political influence?
Well, political influence can really be gained by, as we say, get in the game. You can't really garner political influence by simply sitting on the sidelines. And it's funny because a lot of people ask me when I wrote the book, so, what's Patriot Mission's position on this candidate, this issue, this particular ballot initiative? The answer is we don't take positions. The position we take is every citizen needs to get in the game. I have no idea what's going on in your county, but you can find out. It's much easier to sit around and ask somebody's opinion and just listen to them and follow them blindly, which is part of the challenge we've had in the country. So now, our situation is very simple. Everybody that plays ball with us needs to commit to being registered to vote and get in the game in their local community. Find out what the issues are. Ask the questions. And when people begin to realize that A, they can understand it, B, they can get information, and C, they've got something to say about it because the people that work for us are public servants, they serve us, suddenly there's an aha moment where people get together and realize they actually do have influence on what can happen. So whether that's a school board race or a local county commission seat, now people begin to see, you know what, we do have influence. And that can spread in a county, in a state, and ultimately across the country.
And in this day and age, even when we go to the airport, we're basically treated like criminals every time we get on a plane, and we've got cameras, it seems like, peering at us from just about every angle. Especially if you live in any sort of a metropolitan area. Is there anything we can do to increase our liberty, or are we just stuck with whatever the state allows us to keep?
I think if we just simply accept where we are and say there's nothing we can do about it, then we reap what we sow. Then there is nothing we can do about it. However, liberty is a function of those who are in power and what it is that they enact. And so if we have political influence and we can grow that political influence, our Constitution gives us the capability to change that which we don't agree with. Obviously, there are reasons for technology, there are reasons for security, and all of those issues, we can go through them chapter and verse, but I don't believe we're stuck with anything unless we simply roll over and allow what's in place to stay, which only gets worse and worse as time goes by.
And along that same line of liberty, our military chaplains are no longer allowed to pray in the name of Jesus, especially when they're in a public ceremony. The policy in the military for Christians is essentially don't ask, don't tell. The Ten Commandments have been stripped from the courthouse walls. Our children are taught they evolved from the primordial stew in 10 billion BCE, because we don't say BC anymore. It's before Common Era. We can't say before Christ. Can we do all of this without God's blessing?
You know, it's a good question. And from my vantage point, the way I put the book together, I tell my story from the standpoint of being a Christian because that's who I am. But in the 7 liberty principles that I shared with you, one of them is about the Judeo-Christian heritage of our nation. Because a lot of people ask me, so does this mean I have to be a Jew or a Christian to participate in Patriot Mission? The answer is no. What we're going to agree on, if we're going to work together, is the fact that our country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, which is not an argument. You can't argue that point if you know how to read or study history at even a basic level. So one of the things that comes out of that is that, have you ever read the book, The 5,000 Year Leap?
No.
It's a great story about the miracle that changed the world, because essentially back in 1770s, America was, and what the technology and everything that we had was basically had been the same for about 5,000 years. And what was it that happened that caused America to be the miracle that changed the world? And so this gentleman who actually wrote the book back in the 80s, he looked at all of these amazing things that happened and the core principles that made America who she is. And the second principle is that a free people cannot survive under a Republican, small r, a Republican Constitution unless they remain virtuous and morally strong. Well, virtue and moral strength, obviously you and I understand, come from a biblical perspective. And when it comes down to it, we have to be virtual. We have to be morally strong. We have to be living the values that essentially come from the Bible. Whether you believe in the Bible or not, the biblical principles are principles. And that's what's given America its amazing grace and its ability to change the world. So from that standpoint, whether you're a believer or not a believer, those biblical principles are, I think, essential for America's survival.
Okay, so you've convinced us not to give up on America. What's the action plan to rebuild?
Well, we actually created a 7-step plan, and we used the acronym REBUILD to remember it. The first R is that we're going to recruit experienced leaders. E stands for educate. We're going to educate new leaders. B stands for build bold leadership teams. U stands for uniting those leadership teams in action. I is to inspire America's generations. L is to leverage compatible organizations. And D is to drive traffic to small businesses. So our whole blueprint maps out how we do that, and it's a pretty aggressive game plan, but it's also a lot of fun, and it focuses on the fundamentals and brings people together, especially those that are new to the small business world.
And what are some good small businesses that people can just sort of start out of their home that don't require a whole lot of cash to get started?
Mark, probably the best business to start is a service business, one that focuses on your skills and gifts and talents. And it's funny, I ask a lot of young folks, about starting business. And I asked them, I said, what's the first thing you have to do if you're going to start a business? You know what their number one response is?
What's that?
I got to go borrow money, which gives you an idea of where their mental perspective is on entrepreneurship and capitalism. So I asked them the question, so what if it would be illegal to borrow money? Then what would you do? And you get the 1,000-yard stare. They don't have the faintest idea. So then I asked them a follow-up question. I said, so let me ask you this. Do you use Facebook? And of course they look at me like I'm a moron. Yes, old man, we use Facebook. What planet are you on? And I said, so how many small businesses do you think effectively use a Facebook fan page? And they kind of scratched their head, don't really know. And I said, I will tell you that the vast majority of them don't use a Facebook fan page. And they're like, well, why not? It's free. I said, yeah, but A, it's not their world. B, they don't really understand it. C, they don't want to take the time to do it, but they would pay you to do it. How much does it cost you to set up a Facebook fan page? And they're like, nothing. Right, just your time, which you just told me is worth nothing. So the reality is those small business people would pay you to do something you already know how to do and you're good at. All you have to figure out how to do is connect those dots, and that's part of what we help with. But so that's, any type of a service business, especially around technology, especially around giftings. There are folks that are really good with helping people learn different things, and just takes a little bit of time to dig into what your real gifts are, and there's a business in there somewhere, solving problems.
Now, a lot of our listeners at Prepper Recon, they're hyper aware of the dependency class that are very content to just stay in the bushel, as you say in your book. The welfare class may not do much, but they do vote, and they consistently vote for that gravy train candidate. Some of our listeners may be a bit pessimistic about the chance of a renaissance anytime soon, but this concept of embracing the entrepreneurial spirit still works on a personal level, right?
Oh, it does. And it's, unfortunately, the people that are living in the welfare class have been led there. They've been led down a track that ultimately has destroyed families, destroyed economies, and is in the process of destroying America as we know it. Those same people, because of the heart that they have and their spirit, they don't want to live there. Now, some certainly will. There are some people that will just, live the way they live just because they are. Going back to biblical times, there are some folks that, they saw Jesus perform miracles and they still said, yeah, whatever, we're going to hang with our heathen ways. Other people said, holy smokes, I'm going that way. So I don't buy the fact that they all just want to sit there and live on the couch and watch TV all day and take money. There are a lot of people that would love to find a way out. They just don't know how to do it. They don't know where to turn. They don't know how to get away from the influences of the people around them. So, we have a choice. We can accept the fact that they're never going to change, or we can stand up and say, you know what? I'm willing to draw my own personal line in the sand and contribute to the effort to lead those people a different direction and share what I know with people that are willing to listen. So it's just a different way of thinking. Is it easy? No. Is it going to be a challenge connecting to those people? Yes. Does it matter? Not really. That's my perspective and part of the strategy that we've had to begin to share this and look at our country in a way that people haven't really done in a long time. And there's going to be upheaval no matter what happens. But I prefer that we proactively get out ahead of it and pull some folks together. And the cool thing about small business is that it crosses every geographic, social, racial, economic, religious, every boundary in America, goes down when you talk about small business, because small businesses are everywhere and they serve every community. So that's one of the cool things about using both the metaphor and the practical reality of small business.
And I mentioned when we were talking a little bit before the interview that I did start reading the book, and I think it's fantastic. And I would say even if we're not able to pull out of the death spiral we're in, if the downward momentum proves to be unstoppable and we crash and burn, the Patriot Mission Story, it still makes a great blueprint for sort of a redo or a post-reset handbook to get back to being prosperous and having a nation again.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, these fundamental principles are fundamental no matter what happens. In other words, the market can crash, but if you have a skill, there's a way to barter that skill for food. If you have an idea, there's a way to get a couple people together that know how to put their ideas together and create a solution to help other people. So the principles and the understanding and the knowledge of entrepreneurship are critical to understand. And it's also important, Mark, that people realize that not everybody is called to be an entrepreneur. But when you understand how small business works and you're educated and you understand leadership and you understand money, you can work together with other people that have complementary skills and talents and create a great result. Whether that means we're digging ditches and planting flowers or food, or whether it means we're operating in a high-tech capacity that the country's in right now. Doesn't really matter, but those skill sets and those relationships and the ability to communicate face-to-face are also very important.
And you touched just briefly at the beginning of the interview also about coming off the gold standard and sort of the financial downward spiral that we're in. If we do have a major economic reset, a lot of the big box jobs are going to go away, and you're going to have some sort of a entrepreneurial spirit and some sort of a small business idea of your own to have anything to do, because a lot of those jobs are just going to go away. And some of the great things that may come out of that, we may see, we've seen in Detroit, we've seen the police response times to 911 calls get up to around 58 minutes. So security may open up, private security. That may be something. Maybe a lot of farming, if people aren't willing to sell us their goods from other countries for our devalued currency. Farming might be a big one. Appliance and auto repair might be big ones too, because I think we're going to lose this disposable American lifestyle that we've built on cheap goods from China, because when the dollar goes, that's all going to be gone.
Mm-hmm. And it's important you mentioned those skills and the ability to, just use your hands and put tools together and create and build. And a lot of young folks have never developed those skills. So this is a great time, to get out ahead of it, to learn how to build things, to learn how to make things, to learn how to be reliant on your brain and your hands and the people around you to solve problems. And many of those can be turned into financial blessing if you know how that works too.
And tell us about your next project and how the listeners can get involved.
Well, the blueprint in the Patriot Mission Story maps out a strategic plan. It maps out a way that we can inspire the nation, build the bold leadership teams, and grow our capital, political influence, and liberty. The practical reality is all that's got to be done by people. And leadership, as I mentioned, is the cornerstone of that. So we have a follow-on project called The Power of Small Business, 100 inspirational stories from bold entrepreneurs who are rebuilding America. Are you familiar with the Chicken Soup for the Soul series?
Yes.
What we're doing is writing a book very similar to that with inspirational stories from entrepreneurs who have been there, done that all over America, who have inspirational stories to share. So our next project, we're looking for co-authors. We're looking for sponsors that want to help that project get out there, and buddied together with the Patriot Mission Story, we have a powerful combination that's going to make a huge impact. That book's going to be released on June 19th of next year, and we still have some slots remaining for co-authors and for others that want to help us get that word out. And we put it together in a pretty cool format in a kind of a crowdfunding model, which they can learn about if they go to the patriotmissionstory.com site. So that's what's next on the horizon.
Very cool. And of course, we'll have links to your website, and we'll have a link to purchase your book in today's show notes. But for the folks that are listening on Stitcher or iTunes or maybe watching on YouTube, can you tell us where they can find you? And is there a way that they can sign up for your mailing list?
Sure. If they go directly to thepatriotmissionstory.com, they'll get a quick 1 and 40-second introduction. And if they just click the Tell Me More button, they'll be able to either watch some free videos if they'd like, or they can just register for our free lifetime membership. We put that together, which includes our newsletters and a lot of other things, so that people could get to know us and get everything that we have to offer.
Steve, thanks again so much for coming on the show, and thanks again for your service to our country.
Mark, it's a pleasure doing the show with you. Thanks for all you do. It's a yeoman's work to put all this together, and I appreciate you keeping everybody in the loop.
Hey Preppers and Patriots, my new book, American Exit Strategy, Book 1 of the Economic Collapse Chronicles, is now available in audiobook format through Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Of course, you can still purchase the Kindle edition or paperback edition through Amazon as well. God-fearing patriots and those who believe in the Constitution will find this near-future dystopian novel to be right up their alley. Those who are looking to be more informed about the potential threat to America's financial stability will learn what to watch for and how to prepare themselves for an economic collapse. In Book 1, America is on the cusp of financial annihilation. Matt and Karen Baer face the challenges of Main Street during a full-scale financial meltdown. Government borrowing and monetary creation have reached their limits. When funds are no longer available for government programs, widespread civil unrest erupts across the country. Matt and Karen are forced to move to a more remote location, and their level of preparedness is revealed as being much less adequate than they believed prior to the crisis. Meanwhile, Paul Randall, a third-party presidential candidate, arises to push back against the welfare and warfare spending that have bankrupted our country. Paul Randall proposes a plan to mitigate the coming hyperinflationary collapse, which is a mathematical certainty. His plan is known as the American Exit Strategy. American Exit Strategy uses survival fiction to take an in-depth look at the real-life politics and economics behind the issues that are likely to trigger a currency collapse or financial meltdown in the near future. American Exit Strategy is a work of fiction until it becomes history. The book is chock full of great prepper tips, and it makes a great Christmas gift for those who are trying to wake up to the need to prepare. Get your copy today at AmericanExitStrategy.com or through Amazon. God bless and happy prepping.